It is now my pleasure to welcome our main speaker. Oh, you get, wait, Mike. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. First, I want to congratulate Jason that took a newcomer chip, and I believe it was Jackie, Sarah, Jill, Brenda, and Ed that took birthdays. You know, I remember when I was out there back in 1982. They opened the Black Angus in Ventura. That's where I first met Brenda. She's looking at me. I said, if I ever drink like her, I'm going to quit. Then I came into AA. She came in later, and she said the same thing about me. She'll tell you, girls weren't the only ones that used to dance on the bar. I was crazy out there. I'm not in Alcoholics Anonymous because I drank too much. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous because I could never drink enough. And whenever I picked up a drink, it was time to score some Coke. And when I did that, then I was off for at least a couple of days. And I don't need to have a full-time job if I can drink on part-time pay, so I wasn't going to do that. And so this is, I guess, how it started however, my problems began long before I picked up the first drink, as it did for many of us. And I needed to recognize that. In step one, it says that we were powerless over alcohol, but it also says that our lives had become unmanageable. It was unmanageable from a very early age because I was different from you. I was afraid of you. And I was afraid because ever since I was a kid, I had just a numerous amount of allergies. I could only eat protein and all that stuff because chocolate, everything would just make me break out. If I ate eggs, I'd go into anaphylactic shock. But what I found out is if that happened to me, if eggs did for me what alcohol did, I would have been eating them by the carton. That's the difference between the alcoholic allergy and the rest of them. When I ate these other substances, I didn't want them anymore. But the first time that I experienced alcohol, it was a magic. Everybody remember that magic? It kind of went down, that warm, burning sensation going down your throat, and how it felt when it went to your head. I mean, even as a little kid, I loved blacking out. I used to spin around in a circle at the age of 9 years old and hold my breath until finally I just hit the floor and passed out and blacked out. Got a rush out of it and had to get up and do it again. See? There you go. Ed knows. And so I was different. And I didn't like being different. It scared me. So it's like when I found alcohol, I found a solution to that feeling of being different. I found alcohol, and all the fears went away. It's kind of like the promises. When I found alcohol, I found a new freedom and a new happiness. Right? Fear of people and economic insecurity. I didn't have any money, so why should I be financially insecure? And at an early age, I got married young. The thing was, I moved from Venice, California. When I lived in Venice, California, the first time I experienced alcohol, my mother gave it to me, actually, and she wasn't trying to get me drunk. She just thought, they used to play cards and have the neighbors come over and play cards. And a little kid, I'd walk up to the table and look at what they're doing, and what's that funny glass with the salt around it? And she would hand it to me, this salty dog, and she let me have a taste of that, and I go, I like that. Now, she didn't just keep feeding it to me. I didn't get drunk at the table, but I remembered liking that. And then I had a friend in the neighborhood that would sneak his dad's beer, and we'd sneak down the alley, and we'd drink. Because, back in the 60s, drinking and smoking and all that other stuff, parents would do that right in the house. That was the example I had of adulthood. So I'd steal my dad's cigarettes and go down the alley, and I'd light up some cigarettes. I couldn't inhale. I would pretend I was inhaling. I'd get a little dizzy, and I always liked getting dizzy. To me, that was like a natural state. And so, I smoked these cigarettes or tried to, and I was starting to get in trouble. I was causing trouble in the neighborhood. my friend and I discovered, I guess what we found out was we went down to Thrifties. Anybody remember that? Drugstore Thrifties? And Thrifties and Save On, whatever it was. We found out, because somebody told us, if you go get this stuff, the saltpeter and sugar, and put it in a coffee can, and then light it on fire, it'll make a tremendous smoke bomb. And it did. We put it in a coffee can, and late at night, this is the kind of trouble that we would cause, we would put it out in the middle of the street on Lake Boulevard, which is right by where I lived. And when we saw a car coming in the middle of the night, we'd light that thing on fire, and then it would stop in the middle of the smoke, and we would take these eggs and just bam, 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 and just bomb the crap out of the car, and then ditch down the alley, right? And we used to do that all the time until I finally got busted, and my dad, who was also an ex-cop, ex-Navy guy from World War II, and an ex-cop who believed in discipline. But the thing is, because I had these allergies I told you about, and I used to scratch myself raw, Mom said, you can't I don't care what he does. If he sits in the living room at the stereo cabinet and pulls the knobs off the stereo, leave him alone. At least he's not scratching himself raw. Because I can remember running in the house with the inside of my legs bleeding I just couldn't stop. As a little kid, they tied me down in the crib to put ointment on me. I saw pictures of bandages all over me. I was different. Nobody should feel that different. And I was scared. So that was the equalizer. That's where it started. Then we moved to Camarillo from Venice. And I didn't really have any friends out here. I thought, yeah, from Venice to Camarillo in 1969, that's like, what the hell is this? It was like barren. There was an Air Force base where the airport is right now. And it was just all empty fields. So I went from what I would say the big city to a deserted area. And it was like, I had a white radio that only played AM. Back then, AM was the popular stations, right? 95 KHJ, whatever, And it's like, so that was my entertainment. So I was bored. And I ran into some other kids that I ended up going to high school with, and they were Mormon. And they invited me to their church. So I said, sure. My mom was all for it. God, maybe it'll keep them out of trouble. And so I started going there, and I liked it because they had a basketball court in the church, and I liked playing basketball. And they had a softball team, and I liked playing baseball. I like sports. So I got involved in these sports in this church, and next thing you know, they're teaching me what they believe. Next thing you know, I'm going down in this water and getting dunked, and I'm going, okay, look, this is the truth. This is what I need. So that's why I tell people I'm a recovering Mormon. Mormons, they frown on drinking. They frown on drugs, of course. They frown on cigarettes and coffee and extramarital sex or premarital sex or anything. And so I had to give up alcohol, drugs, coffee, cigarettes, and sex, and it was the worst hour of my life. I'm all messed up in my head. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. To me, God is like Bill Wilson said in the Big Book, the czar of the heavens. He's up there on some cloud, keeping score on my ass. And it's God 3,000 and Mike nothing. Mike's not buying his way into heaven. So if I can't be all good, I might as well be all bad. So I'm a liar, cheat, and a thief. I don't know how to be faithful to anybody. Whatever feels good at the moment, instant gratification is my middle name. And no matter who it hurt, and no matter how bad I felt for hurting somebody, I couldn't stop this behavior. And I remember I kept moving home in between. I got married twice and had kids. I'm going to cut through a lot of this because we've only got so much time. So my first wife, who I met in high school, who also was Mormon, so I had to get married to have sex. So I stole my parents' car and we went to Vegas. And then, okay, now I could do it. And I liked the car. It was a 1973 Pontiac Le Mans GT, So I'm going to have to take a little heat when I get home with their car. Better to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. That's my attitude. So I'm married now, even though I don't have a clue what to do as a husband. you know. My first drink was probably around 9 or 10 years old, so emotionally, that's probably about how old I was. So I don't know what to do except now I can do what I want to do without going to hell. And then she got pregnant. Oh, wow. Now what? Well, I'll do what everyone does. I'll join the service. They'll pay for the baby. So I signed up for the Air Force. Somebody said, why didn't you become a Marine? I said, because, I have a high school education. I don't have to be a Marine. Jarheads don't need a diploma. That's what I told them. Right? No offense to any Marines in here, because I do respect your service. And I struggled with that too. So what kind of a job am I going to have in the Air Force? Well, I don't know. My dad was a cop. I'd like to wear a gun. I'm responsible. So I became a cop in the Air Force, law enforcement. They had two divisions, SP and LE. I was LE. So I got to drive around in a truck and pull you over, give you a ticket or whatever, and pretend I was tough. I always liked pretending to be somebody that I wasn't, because I'm scared. That's what scared people do. They find someone else's identity and try to imitate that because they're not comfortable enough being who they are, because I'm different. So I'm a cop, but I'm not responsible. My wife's at home with the babies, and I can't seem to stay home. I have a couple of drinks. I got to leave the base. I go off base. I hit a bar. I'm out there with some buddies. I don't know what I'm doing. Next thing you know, I'm not really being a faithful husband or anything. I'm out of control. I'm doing drugs. I'm drinking, and I'm not going home. And I'm supposed to be, especially with the job I have in the service, I'm not behaving anything like I ought to be. So anyway, long story short, after a series of questionable things, as far as like not inappropriate behavior that the service would frown on, just things like not showing up for work for roll call and things like that. So they dismissed me and took the gun away and said, it was humiliating. You're going on the goon squad. What the heck is that? Well, you're going to be mopping floors and cleaning toilets. And that was humiliating. But at least I didn't have to get up at 5 a.m. anymore. But I couldn't even show up for work for that. I remember calling in and saying I can't, they actually called me and they told me, hey, you need to get to work. I said, I can't, I'm sick. Well, you better go to sick call. In the service, you have to report for sick call. So you say, you better go to sick call or you're going to be AWOL. And I didn't make it. In any case, as ashamed as I was of it, my career lasted 13 months in the service instead of 4 years. And I was ashamed of it. I still got benefits because I did not get discharged under dishonorable conditions. I got discharged under honorable conditions. But I remember when I got my benefits, I actually went to him and said, hey, listen, if you want me to go into service, go back in and peel potatoes for 2 years, I'll do it for you. Because I felt really bad about it. And this was after I got sober, of course. So in any case, it took me 13 months to get discharged from the Air Force and excommunicated from the Mormon church all at the same time. Because my wife would go tell the bishop what I've been up to. And they have bishop's court, and then they tell you, you know what? And then that just confirmed what I was thinking. You see there, I'm not good enough for God. They kicked me out. They kicked me out. God's not interested in me. So instead of trying to patch things up with the wife, there was someone else that was on the goon squad that I used to do drugs with and stuff like that, and he lived in Azusa, California, and he said, hey man, my parents got a place, you can move in with us, and I ended up moving over to his place, and that was a mistake. I remember he worked for a while for a veterinarian, and we broke in, and he got fired, so we broke into the veterinary hospital. And we kicked down the door and stole like $60 and a bottle of phenobarbital. And, we also broke into a couple of houses. I don't know, and then next thing you know, his parents were kicking me out. And so I end up coming back to Camarillo and moving back in with my parents. And actually, I got married one more. I got divorced and then married again, and that didn't work out in like 2 years, and we had a child. I hope you can keep up with this. And then I ended up every time I was going through relationship problems, I'd go home to mom because I am a thumb sucking, high chair pounding mama's boy. Because she won't let anybody hurt me, you know? And I can't act like a thumb sucking, high chair pounding mama's boy. I have to be disguised. When I showed up for my first AA meeting, I had a leather jacket on with the collar turned up. My hair was slicked back. My sunglasses were on. It was dark outside. And I had these parachute pants with zippers all over them. And I looked like a cross between Michael Jackson and Elvis Presley. And my sponsor, I remember the sponsor that I had told me that when he first met me, I was looking slick and feeling sick. And he nailed it. I got a sponsor. I went to this meeting at this guy's house, and they fed me a spaghetti dinner, and they lit a fireplace up, and they had a candlelight meeting here in Ventura. And at that time, I was reduced to living in the backseat. I was going to be living in the backseat of my car. I was living with a girl. I'd left my parents because they had thrown me out of the house at the tender age of 32 and said I couldn't come home. And I moved in with this waitress. She was, anybody remember Pete and Pat's Casbah from the good old days? Anybody? So she worked at Pete and Pat's, and then she also worked at the Hong Kong Inn. Anybody remember that? So I had a part-time job at the time to try and helpfully, maybe support myself. I was a telemarketer. I was making phone calls for the Sheriff Association, try and sell you tickets to their rodeo at the fairgrounds. And I'm living with this girl, and she's at work all night. When she's at work all night, I'm out bar hopping. It's what I do. I'm looking for somebody to make me feel secure in my own skin. I still can't get there on my own. So I'm out there doing that. And one night I'm coming home. I'm shit-faced drunk, excuse my language. I'm walking down the middle of the C-word, and I'm playing Dodge Car on the way home. Hit me if you can. I don't care if you run over me. Toxic shame is something. If you're in here and you're new, you're suffering from something you don't understand. We encourage you to keep coming back. You don't understand it. It's not a moral issue. You actually have an allergy, an illness, a malady that's beyond your control. It tells me that right here in this book. If you don't have a copy of this book, I suggest you get one. When I came to that meeting, I walked out with a copy of this book, signed by the people in that meeting. And they told me something before I left, which was important to me, I guess, because I hadn't heard it in a long time, if ever at all. They told me, Mike, keep coming back. In that time of my life, everybody was telling me where to go. Nobody was looking for me to come back anywhere. I wasn't getting invited anywhere. I wasn't employable. Oh my God. And so anyway, I can recall I kept coming back. I had really no friendly direction left to go. And eventually, I got thrown out of that house I was living in with that girl and the 3 roommates that used to bring cocaine home to me because I really didn't have to go shopping. The roommates would just bring it. And they were all asking me to leave, saying I got a problem. I'm saying, me, what about you? And they go, no, we're not like you. You got to go. And I got thrown out of that house. And then I was living in my alcoholic car. If you don't know what that looks like, I'll try and give you a thumbnail sketch. It's a 1979 Mercury Capri hatchback. The color was white on rust. The headliner of the car was coming down on my head. It was a 4-speed, so that transmission hump ran all the way through to the back. The seat covers were all ripped. You could take the eraser end of a pencil and poke it through any part of the car because it was so rusted out. The tail light was busted from a hit and run. I got pinned between a stop sign and an 18-wheel truck in Satakoy, going to my part-time job, drunk, behind the wheel, and I thought I could take the truck, and I was trying to cut him off, and he came across my car and I could see him in my rearview mirror, and it was impossible for me to jump from one seat to the next seat. I was going to die. I saw him coming right at the driver's door and going to crush me. And he missed me by maybe 2 inches and literally rolled over my car, right over the front tire on the front quarter panel, and crushed the car. And oh my God, now what do I do? I got a DUI in 1984, and I called an attorney who got me out of that DUI in 1984. And he told me just to call up the company that rolled over my car and blame them. They won't want to fight with you. They'll just want to settle and go get an estimate, and they'll send you a check. They sent me a check for $750, and I never did fix the car. It was all up my nose on the weekend, and drank it all away. And I was fortunate enough to know that attorney, because that DUI that I got, I left, again, the Black Angus. I had a couple of Black Russians. I met a couple of people, and I was driving home, and they said that they were going to go to their house and party. Did I want to come along? You know how that is, right? So I said, sure, I'll follow you. At that time, I had a 73 Coupe de Ville. That was in ’84. And cops pulled me over and said I was kind of swerving. And I said, oh, it's a play of the wheel. It's just a Cadillac. It's a play of the wheel. And then they pulled me out of the car and had me stand on one leg and touch my nose and all that good stuff they have us do, and asked me if I had anything to drink. The people in front of me I was following, they stopped and watched this whole thing. And so next thing I know, they're saying, okay, do this. All right, now put your hand behind your head. Click, and then they do that. They click me and then take me off to Ventura County. We didn't have breathalyzers in cop cars back then. So they took me off to Hall of Justice, and they had me blow and I puffed up my cheeks and acted like I was blowing really hard when I was barely letting any air out. And they had me blow 3 times because I blew a 0.9 3 times. And at that time, the legal limit was 1.0 at that time in '84. The fine was $750 for a first DUI. The attorney was $650. So I gave him the phone number because I had a phone number for the people that I was following. I gave him the phone number. He called them, and they said, no, you passed the test fine. We watched him stand on one leg and everything. And he called up the DA, and he said, listen, the guy didn't blow 1.0. I got witnesses that said he was doing fine. You want to blow a 97% conviction record on one guy? And they threw the case out. I got really lucky. And from then on, I just slept in the car if I was drunk. That wasn't a reason to stop driving drunk. It was just a reason to stop, sleep in the car. Put your car somewhere, put your keys somewhere, and hopefully you remember where they are. Because I used to always wake up in front of Bojangles off the freeway. That was like my bedroom. So I got used to sleeping in the back seat of that car, except that hump just ran through that transmission hump. I'm 6'3", the car's 4 foot wide. It's not a motorhome, So I needed a place to live. And so I come into Alcoholics Anonymous and I sober up. And I start working with this guy named Brian. And he's the guy that had the house that had the spaghetti dinner and everything. And he started to work with me. And he helped me get my own house in order. If you want to live and be happy, not just sober, I suggest you put your own house in order. The book discusses precisely how we do it. It says we've recovered in the big book, by the way, and that's why I called myself a recovered alcoholic. And for those of you that don't prefer not to use the word recovered or wish that I wouldn't say it, I would draw your attention to the cover page of Alcoholics Anonymous right here in big bold print, where it says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. I'm thinking, where's the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body here? It says alcoholism. But I'll tell you what, though. One thing in the doctor's opinion it says that you have to do to stay recovered is don't drink. So don't think I'm telling you go on out and drink that you're recovered, because I'm not. I'm still allergic to alcohol. I have no illusion over what it will do to me if I pick up a drink. So I practice these principles in all my affairs so I don't have to do that anymore. Because I got to a point of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, and life for me was unbearable. My ex-wives didn't love me. My kids, I was estranged from everybody. And today, I'm friends with my ex-wives. Well, maybe except for number one. Uh, just kidding. Just kidding. I'm friends with my ex-wives. In fact, I even have a husband-in-law. He's great. We laugh all the time. When my son got married in 2015 and I flew to Colorado for the wedding, he was there. And I didn't embarrass anybody, and I was there for what I could bring to the occasion. And there was people everywhere was drinking. I was drinking a 7-Up. I danced with my daughter-in-law. God bless her. I love her. And I danced with my son, and we just had a great time. And I was looking for what I could bring to the occasion because according to what I read in the book, I can go to the most sordid place on earth and be immune from drinking if I maintain a fit spiritual condition. That's the only condition. Meeting makers make it. It's good to go to meetings, especially if you're new, but I think coffee makers make it. I think greeters make it. You know, a little bit extra than just attending the meeting to participate in my own recovery. And I learned to do that. So in step one, seeing my life was unmanageable, my sponsor told me, and you know, I think you should go down. You remember Mervyn's department store? Huh. It's been closed for a long time. Well, it was open back in '87. He told me I needed to go down and apply for some credit. I said, I don't want to apply for credit. I haven't had credit in 12 years. I had a car repo. I'm embarrassed. I don't want him to. I'm a roach on paper. I don't want him to see it. Just do what I tell you. Okay. That's exactly what he said. So I went down to Mervyn's and I applied, I filled out this card and everything, and I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere. I'm going to get another rejection letter because I'm different. I'm different. I'm not like other people. I won't be accepted. God doesn't love me. Why would they? And then a few weeks later, I got a credit card in the mail with a $300 limit. I went to my sponsor. I said, all this power in the hands of a child, what do I do with it? I literally said that. And he had to tell me, he had to instruct me on how to properly use that card to build my credit back up. And then next thing you know, I traded in my alcoholic car for something I wasn't embarrassed to drive. It was a Pontiac 6000, right off Thompson Boulevard. I built my credit and I was able to get a car. And you know what? When I traded that car in, I think I probably got $100 for it. But when I traded that car in, I fell on top of the car and I kissed it. And I said goodbye with tears in my eyes because that car had been through everything I'd been through. That car on the outside appearance was who I was on the inside. It was like letting a piece of myself go. So I did that. And then next thing you know, I got a job that was actually 8 hours a day. And then I became the assistant manager of the store. And then I had a bank account. Then I got an apartment. I even got a girlfriend. But that didn't last. I think you girls in AA are great. And I always tell people, if you want a relationship, guys in AA, the odds are good. But remember, the goods can be a little odd. And remember, guys, you ain't any different than they are. So it's 50-50 here, ladies. You get what you pay for, right? Right. I brought Rhonda here with me. You guys don't know Rhonda, but Rhonda and I have been seeing each other for like maybe a year and a half. I don't know. And, you know, we never fight. I'm not looking anywhere else to see where else I might get happy. I'm perfectly content. This is really strange. And what I like is I like what she has on the inside. That's what attracts me. We laugh all the time. And if she invites me someplace, she lets me know, you know, if you're busy, I understand. Don't feel obligated. I said, what did you do? Read the book on how to get a man and keep him? So, I mean, I have a good time with her. We've gotten on a plane and flown out of the area to go see her family and mine and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know where this thing is going to go. I just know I'm enjoying it. But here, let me tell you something about, and if you don't mind. Let me tell you something. She's what we call a normie. In AA, that's called an anomaly. She can have a glass of wine, and by the time she gets into the second glass of wine, she's had enough. We call that alcohol abuse. You need to finish what you start and then go score some dope. But that's the way I think. That's the way I'm wired. You see, if you're new to understand this, I have, well, I guess I'll take it out of the book. I mean, we got time. I did bring the book after all. And again, putting your own house in order. I want to thank Derek over there and a few others that come to my house and read the book with me every week so I don't forget what's in it. I always see the new line, too. There's always a new line. But for those of you that are new, this is what it's about, the doctor's opinion. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Rhonda likes the effect produced by alcohol too, but after she gets the effect, she's had enough. She doesn't take the effect produced by alcohol and lose her house over it. Okay? The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, the alcoholic life is the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can, again, experience a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once from taking a few drinks they see others taking with impunity. After they've succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well-known stages of the spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution never to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. And when they talk about the psychic change, I like to go to page 25, and it says there is a solution. Almost none of us likes the self-searching and leveling of our pride. Who likes that? This is what it takes if you want to stay sober. It's been my experience anyway. Self-searching, leveling of our pride, which the process requires for the successful consummation. But we saw it had really worked in others and had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we'd been living it. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us to do but to pick up a simple kit of spiritual tools which had laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been, I love this part, we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had never dreamed. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and our lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things which we could not do by ourselves. And that's why I'm here, because I've had some deep and effective spiritual experiences, and you people have touched my life, and I wasn't asking you to help me. I just, I had a sponsor. I got a sponsor in the back of the room, by the way. Hello, Jim. And I love that guy. Talk about being rocketed into a fourth dimension. He got me to look at things so differently. He turned me on to some books that aren't necessarily AA related, but are spiritual. And I think that the 11th step is calling for me to improve my conscious contact with God any way I can do it. And once he turned me on to this one little book, I got so hungry, and I'm not a big reader, but that year I read 13 books. Power of Now, The Four Agreements. The list was endless. I love The Four Agreements. This is all about a psychic change. As they say, and insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So don't expect a psychic change by performing your insanity. Do something different. Get outside the box. Get outside the box. I tell Jim, shouldn't we be in the center of the herd? He says, you know what? If you're not living life on the edge, you're probably taking up too much space. I love that. Gets me to think differently. Now I realize life happens for me. It doesn't happen to me. This is all about entering the realm of the Spirit. And he helped me get there. And then a few other people. I had a sponsor that passed away, and I always like to talk about him. Some people know Eugene Wilson. I went to Eugene Wilson when I was finally ready, and I don't know if I was ready. I was sober, but I was stark raving sober. I had a lot going on in my life, and I don't have enough time to go into that story. But I'll just say that I was hurting. And I was hurting so bad because, like I said, from an early life, I never felt worthy. So I was hurting so bad on that day that I was really kind of suicidal. And I went up to him at the Ventura Alano Club, which now has been closed for years, but I used to love that place. And he saw me after a meeting. And I looked at Eugene, and he said, "What's the matter?" I looked at this desperation in my eyes. I was crying. He says, "What's wrong?" You know, I didn't want to drink, but I told him the truth. I looked at him and I said, because you can go here in sobriety. You can be stark raving sober. And I looked at him and I said, this is a good day to die. And I meant it. And you know what he didn't do? He didn't pat me on the back and say, go to another meeting. He said, can you put off killing yourself for a couple hours? Until you meet me over at my place. My apartment's right up the street over here in Ventura. And he told me where it is. And I said, yeah, I guess I can put off knocking myself off for 2 more hours. And I went and I met him in his apartment. And we sat out on his balcony and I told him everything that was going on. And he says to me after I tell him all this, he says, Mike, are you willing to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand God? And I said, I can't. First, I said, I'm willing to ask him a knowledge of his will for me and the power to carry that out. He said, that's not what I asked you. Your will's everything you think and your life's everything you do. Are you willing to give that to God as you understand God? And I put my hands on my face, bawled like a baby, like this, and I said, I can't. God's not interested in me. What a lonely feeling. I'm still reliving it. I love the fact that I can share my emotions with people today and not hide behind somebody I'm not. I felt completely abandoned by God because nothing in my life at that time in my sobriety was going right. And he asked me to come into his apartment. He told me, I want you to face this wall over here, and I want you to hold your arms out to your side like this. And when you're willing to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand God, just fall back. And he stood there in silence for a good couple of minutes. I was resisting. I don't trust God. No, blah, 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 blah. And then it occurred to me, the thought came into my head, Mike, just a couple hours ago, you told this guy you wanted to kill yourself. Why do you want your life? Just fall back. Give it up. You don't want it anyway. I said, okay, God, if you are interested, take it. I don't want it. And I fell back. I just released. He caught me about 2 inches from the floor. But I was so exhausted and in tears, I didn't care if I had banged my head on the floor. And he picked me up and he turned me around and he patted me and held me and embraced me like he cared. And he said, you're going to be okay now. And I've been okay ever since. And I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since February the 21st of 1991. And for that, I'm very grateful. Then, years later, he had moved out of the area up north to Arcata, Eureka, California. And I'd gone up to visit him up there before. And it's funny, I went to the Eureka Alano Club, and he showed me there was a bar right next to the Eureka Alano Club called the AA Bar and Grill. And if you go into that bar with your chip and put it on the counter and say, give me a drink, they will give you 1 drink for your chip. True story. Anyway, Eugene had caught cancer. I also went through a bout with cancer myself, kidney cancer, uniquely enough, because that's what he got. And I wasn't going to go to his funeral. I wanted to see him before he died and thanked him for what he had done for me. And I went up there and I spent 3 days of a Christmas holiday in 2010 with my friend. And I thanked him for everything. And we laughed. And I told him, I says, I figured out the answer to your question. He said, what question was that? I said, you asked me, when I die, what do I want written on my tombstone? And I'd never heard that before. He said, what'd you come up with? I said, I don't even care if my name's on there. Nobody's going to remember me anyway. Just write, he made a difference for someone else. And he said, I think you're getting it. And he gave me his 20-year chip, which I was going to actually take in February, because he said, I'm not going to be needing this anymore, because we both knew he was dying. And on the last day there, and I was going to drive back to California, he was laying literally on his deathbed. He's not getting up. And I leaned over and I kissed him on his forehead and I thanked him for everything he's done for me. And as I'm walking out of his room, he stops me and he says, Michael, before you leave, is there anything else I can do for you? We're all going to die, but I want to die sober. We're all going to go, but I want to go grateful. And I am grateful to God, to Eugene, to my sponsor, to all of my friends, to the people that come to my house and read the book with me, to the meetings I go to, and to all of you. Thank you very much.